Hi everyone, I am Rabin from Flightline Media. Today we are tackling the Great Wall Hobby Su-27 Flanker B. I've decided to do this plane in the Ukrainian digital camo, a scheme I've always wanted to do. As usual, we start off at the cockpit. The customary prep work of cleaning and sanding, and I must say the fit is good. The KA36 ejection seat is very well represented here. I'm painting the seat with flat back. You may choose semi-gloss black as an option. This allows for better dry brushing to highlight the seat details. Airbrush compressor is at 12 psi. Paint, I usually turn it to 50-50 ratio. Some brush painting to bring out the details on the seat. Clear matte coat to seal everything in. I use a combination of Tamiya panel liner and oils for washes and dry brushing. I decided to go with grey primer rather than black. I wanted a lighter undercoat. Grey primer seems to bring out the cockpit primary color very well. I'm using grey panel liner to highlight the dials and instruments on the cockpit. This assists me later to be able to see the outlines better when detail painting each dial and switch. I'm using a combination of decals and paint for the instrument panel. Grey primer coat for all wheel wells. A darker grey C73 for the intakes is a more accurate color to be chosen. I used the instructions and made this little error of using a more yellowish color and only caught it after attaching the parts, so be mindful of this. All metalizer paint that I use is a combination of AK Extreme and Mr. Color metalizer paints. Using reference pics will be a great help in the painting of the Afterburner exhaust. Using oils to highlight areas as per the pictures that we have. The mix ratio of white to tan is 95:5. I'm using Galaxy masks. I highly recommend this. Now we are moving on to the vertical steps. During the construction, I found little to no significant gaps at all. Cleaning the seams of the canopy and then proceeding to polish it with Tamiya polishing compounds. I'm using Dissolve Putty by Mr. Color to fill gaps. Great thing is you can clean immediately after and not lose detail. Word of caution, the masks have slits to conform to shape, so we had to align them accurately to avoid spray of paint leaking into the canopy. I'm using 7000 grit to sand down the primer for a smooth surface that is suited for primary paints. Light sanding is done. My primary go-to paint is Mr. Color, low fuselage blue camo. I used a mixture of 80% white and 20% sky blue C323. Upper fuselage digital camo light blue mix, white 65%, sky blue C323 35%. I'm using the Foxbot masks for the digital camo, and after much contemplation I thought the best way to do it would be to use the frame of the masks and to spray the camo within it. It's very fiddly, so I had to exercise a lot of patience and I had to take a lot of time with it. I had to measure twice, cut once. I also had to be very generous with masks as I could not afford overspray, as I found that fixing it would be a nightmare once the camos have been painted. I also had to plan the attachments of the masks because mistakes here were very unforgiving. The dark blue camo is cobalt blue 70% to white 30%. Mix ratio is 65-35%, aircraft grey and white. As I was mixing paints for the camo, I had to ensure that I had sufficient amount of paint mix for each type of color I was going to use. I also had to properly plan the implementation of the painting sequences so that the final look and feel is very close to the aircraft. Just a little note of caution, I was building board 39, so there's various parts of the camo that I did not use because it did not show up in the actual planes. So please check the pattern for each plane that you're painting. I used a mixture of AK Extreme metals and Mr. Color metallizers. I used Model Master buffing metallizer here, and I was able to get some subtle effects by using a cotton bud Q-tip to just remove and polish certain areas to give it that little metal fade. I'm putting together the burner cans, grey horizontal and vertical stabs. I'm using Tamiya pastels here. It adds a little bit more realism and I'm able to control the weathering a little bit more. A flat coat to seal everything in. Paint mix ratio 70 to 30. Decals from Foxbot. I had no silvering. They were quick to release from the backing paper and I found them to be very strong. I made a few errors and the decals were very forgiving. Once the decals have settled, I sealed it with Mr. Color Gloss to prep for washes and weathering. I used Tamiya panel liner dark grey mixed with grey lighter shade for the upper fuselage. This gives a nice panel line without being too loud. The lower fuselage was just grey. As the actual plane looked relatively clean in pictures, I kept the weathering to a very minimum. I then sprayed flat coat to seal it all in. I usually have a very light mix of 60-40 thinner to flat coat ratio. This allows me to manage the amount of reflection I want to retain within the plane when I finish. Actual planes have a little bit of reflection and they're not completely dull or flat. I then proceeded to sand down the flat coat to get a smooth surface with 7000 grit sandpaper. Detailing and weathering the wheels, tires, pylons, landing gears and canopy. preparing the weapons for paint, which involves removing seams and sanding it smooth and prepping it with primer before the paint begins. Now we just have to add the actuator arms, gear doors, pylons and antennas. Well guys, there you have it. I really enjoyed this kit, painting this camo. I build as a hobby and for pure enjoyment, so if you have enjoyed watching this, then do subscribe to our channel and click that like button. Thank you for watching.